a lot of controversy talking about what is their favorite NBA era. I'll break down mine. Before I break down all of them, I'll break down the entire era of basketball and then give you my personal favorite right here, right now. This is Uneducated Sports Talk.
To the right hand, being caught. Oh, intercepted by Tiger. Oh, no! Intercepted by Cincinnati. Stallone, it looks like that. The face is Stallone and the Ava. Oh, no! Keith Lee. Oh, a double team. Come on, PJ. Forrest, one. Oh, PJ fell out. 2, 3 strikes. Should I get up, PJ? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
This is Uneducated Sports Talk. Stay smart, stay uneducated.
Welcome, all sports fans and everyone across the nation. This is another episode of Uneducated Sports Talk. I am your host, Carlos Clayton, and we are going to break down what's your favorite NBA era and what is my favorite NBA era. I'll break all that down. We'll get into from Magic and Larry all the way to Steph Curry and KD team up. That was just crazy for the NBA. But before we get into that, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on our road to 3,000 subscribers, and don't forget to share the stream. Let's get it popping for everyone across the nation. Yes, I have not put in today's era where it's being dominated by the likes of Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo and Luka Doncic, those guys like that, because this era is still quote-unquote in the present time. I don't want to talk about the now, what's going on right now. So I'll leave it up for you guys to debate on that. I'm going to talk about what has previously happened, and then maybe in 3 or 4 years we could talk about the next era after this little era. Who knows, right? But I want to live the era that has already happened. Now, before I get into this, I want to say that whatever you choose is your choice, right? It's your preference. It is your prediction. You can't really go wrong by picking an era. I always say that. You cannot go wrong because some folks have lived it. Some folks have studied it. Some folks have, actually sat down and broke all the eras down. And I'm that guy. Now, I'm only 36. I was born in 88. So I've seen a lot of basketball, but I'm also a sports guy, so I've also rewatched basketball history. So I'm going to tell you personally what is my actual favorite era. And there might not be a quote-unquote name for my era or a name for the era, but I'll give you a time frame, a year to year, which I thought was like basketball at its peak in my opinion. And what do I say by at its peak? Competition. One, competition. That has to mean something. That means at one point there were a lot of teams that had a chance to win an NBA championship, and it just so happened that this team or that team won it, right? But there were a lot of great games, although there may have been favorites. They weren't absurd favorites, and I'll break all that down in just a minute. So let's start off with the 1980s. To remind you guys, basketball was going downhill after the 70s, and they were so desperately trying to find somebody or some people or some teams to market and to make the NBA broader, because in the 70s it just was kind of dull towards the end of it. And that's what we have, Magic versus Larry. And before I get to the 80s, hey, if the 70s, if the 60s was your favorite, hey, let me know in the comments down below. Like, let's not forget about the 60s and 70s. So if you think that's what your goal is or your favorite NBA era, let me know as well. And I apologize for not putting it down there, but man, I'm 36. I can't go too far back, right? So let's break down Magic versus Bird, and that was the entire 80s in my opinion. These two, from their Adidas commercials to their rivalry to the East Coast versus West Coast thing going on, it was wonderful to watch that. Now, I wouldn't get this the nudge as the best era because one, there weren't so many teams, and there are only a few teams in that time that were like real contenders. If now towards the late 80s, where Detroit Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Lake Charles, Louisiana. What's up, Joe? All of those guys came in and kind of broke the party up as Magic and Larry started getting a little bit in their older days. The Pistons came in there and kind of rough shop in that late 80s. And you had the Atlanta Hawks with Dominique Wilkins. And look, it was still grown man basketball. So I got much respect for the 80s. It was still grown man basketball. You couldn't come in there with no weak stuff, no punk stuff. These guys weren't getting paid crazy, crazy money like today's NBA. Albeit, if you want to look at times have changed and their money was kind of equaling the market value of today's world. Maybe you could say that, but I wasn't there to actually understand it. So from what I'm hearing is these guys just were not getting paid like today's NBA players are getting paid now. But they still fought their asses off like they were. That's why I wish the younger guys would pay more homage to the older guys for what they had to endure, what they had to go through. But we're talking the '60s and the '70s, right? Now we're talking about the '80s right now. But Magic and Bird were the two pillars of this decade, and it was awesome because of just the hated rivalry. And it's funny because Bird and Magic are best of friends in today's day now. But I mean, that rivalry was what it was all about. That was NBA at its peak, man. And honestly, when you got it, honestly, when you got to get white versus black America versus white America, and that kind of collided. The style of Los Angeles. I mean, everything kind of played its role into creating this buzz. And who loves controversy more than entertainment? Entertainment took that controversy and they rolled with it. I don't think Magic and Bird had any animosity at all. But of course, when your fan base is saying, fuck the Lakers, and their fan base saying fuck the Celtics, well, guess what? You kind of feel that. I want to win for my fan base. I want that to happen, and then it makes it that much more personal. And the fact that these guys always met in the finals. They only played twice here in the regular season, if that, right back in those days. But they always played in the finals for the majority of this decade of the '80s, and it was wonderful to see that, and very happy that they were the pillars of what now we would go into the '90s. And the '90s, if the '80s called Magic versus Bird, '90s is definitely the Jordan era. He won 6 of the championships in that 10-year decade, and honestly, he could have won 8 if he just chose to. In all retrospect, my man could have won 8. But the '90s was all about the GOAT, in my opinion, Michael Jordan. He is the greatest, not only basketball player, I think the greatest athlete of all time. When you talk about an athlete and what he did, and let's keep it real, he only played 11 real seasons for the Bulls. He won 6 championships out of that. Only 11 real seasons and won 6 championships. Think about that. He won in 91, 92, 93. Took off, he won, well, however you want to place it. 91, 92, 93. Took off 94, 95 pretty much. Then won 96, 97, 98. However you want to place those years. But not one, but 2 3-peats. It was all about Michael Jordan. Now, people say, well, people of today's day, the younger generation that's tired of old heads. I guess I'm an old head, 36, but I'm an old head, and I talk about the '90s, and I talk about the early 2000s. I talk about all that, especially when I lived it. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. And people say, "Oh well, Jordan, those guys only play with plumbers," and I say bullshit to all that. But that's another day to talk about that. This is real competition at its finest. Now, you want to talk about Jordan and the Bulls being the favorite every year. Well, that's fine, but this wasn't an absurd favorite. They weren't like we're talking about the Warriors and KD going to them. We're not talking about the Heat going to. I mean, LeBron going to the Heat or KD going to the Warriors. That really changed the landscape of competition. So Jordan and folks, they were still a favorite, but they weren't absurdly the favorites. Jordan and Pippen were there, but it's almost like we didn't stop watching because we just automatically knew they were going to win. No, they were still there, and everyone wanted to see Jordan and his greatness, and it was amazing to watch it if you actually lived through all that. I was blessed to watch NBA at a very, very young age, and I was on the West Coast as well. I'm from Anchorage, Alaska, so I got to see Michael Jordan play at about 5 o'clock my time. So by the time the game was over with, as long as I got my homework done and I was fresh, I watched Jordan and play because they always on prime time. Michael Jordan versus, I mean, the Bulls versus the Knicks, Bulls versus whoever. As long as they played on the East Coast and they played at home, I got to watch that game because the West Coast game is time for me to time to go to bed now. Let's be real. I was 4, 5, 6, 7. You know what I'm saying? Time to go to bed. So I had the luxury of watching Jordan and watching all his games while being up on the West Coast. So that was cool. So I was a mad Jordan fan. It was a crazy time to be alive because it felt like everybody was rooting for Michael Jordan, the Bulls, and with all that pressure to still win 6 out of 10, that was obviously the Jordan era. He dominated. He's the reason why guys like Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley don't have any championships to brag about. Karl Malone, John Stockton. You feel bad for those guys because Jordan really stopped those guys for real in that era, and only Hakeem Olajuwon took advantage of it. That's why he got 2 chippies, baby. Now, let's go to the Lakers dynasty. We got young Kobe Bryant and we got still young Shaquille O'Neal who left from Orlando and went to Los Angeles. Now, people want to hate on that on the Jordan's dynasty, but Kobe and Shaq played a couple years in LA while Jordan was still in his prime and they didn't win. Think about that. Think about how dominant Jordan was to stop a young Shaq, young Kobe, but before that, a young Shaq and young Penny Hardaway. Remember that. When you want to talk about the 90s, Shaq and Kobe dominated the early 2000s. That was a great time to be alive as well because now you had a lot of teams. It felt the same way. Yes, Shaq and Kobe may have been the favorites, but the competition was there. You're talking Sacramento, Chris Webber, Pacers Stojakovic. You know what I'm saying? That nasty Kings team. You're talking about the Portland Trailblazers with Rasheed Wallace and company. Oh, they were stacked, man. The competition was nasty. And I think the East, albeit was the worst of the conference, you still had great competition in those early Boston days with Paul Pierce, Allen Iverson for the Philadelphia 76ers, Jason Kidd with the New Jersey Nets as they were trying to win a championship. Even the Pacers with Reggie Miller and company were in that era. Just that small era with Shaq and Kobe, they were just so dominant early, the first 3 years of that championship run, 01, 02, and 03. I mean, 2000. 01 and 02, excuse me. And it was beautiful to see, but also that same era, let's not forget about Tim Duncan and the Spurs. Mind you, the Spurs won it the first year after Jordan retired, although the lockout year, the Spurs still won it, right? With Tim Duncan coming there. Tim Duncan's only his, I want to say it was his second or third year in the league, and they won the NBA championship, him and David Robinson, first of their two that Robinson that won. So you look at that, it was Spurs, Lakers, Spurs again, but the competition was, I loved it because this was kind of like the time where everyone had a star player. I don't give even the Milwaukee Bucks had guys like Ray Allen, Big Dog Robinson. If you just picked a random team, they had a superstar or a star that was relatable to you. It was just fun to be around that, except for the Clippers. They were just back in those days. But every other team, the Clippers and Grizzlies, how about that? I'll give you Vancouver and I'll give you the Clippers. But everyone else had somewhat of a star play, and it was fun to watch that era. I'm talking about 01 till about that 06 era, 07, it was beautiful basketball. I really enjoyed it because of the competition, and there wasn't a game where even the Lakers couldn't take days off for the majority, even though they were dominating the early part of the 2000s. All right. Well, now let's get into a kind of a big shift now, and here's where I love the fact that Boston got their big three. And they decided to form that team, I believe, in 2008. Am I right about that? It feels like the same 08 time or 07. One of those years, Boston wound up having Ray Allen coming from Milwaukee to join Paul Pierce, and then the big one, the big ticket, Kevin Garnett coming from the Timberwolves to join Ray Allen and Paul Pierce, and they were formed as the big three. And here is why when folks of today say, well, the first big three was Boston Yeah, I mean, when you think of big three, you think of three guys still in their maximum prime. Not these guys, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce, who were all in their 30s when they got together. And it was three guys that had never won a championship. In their respective teams, they may have been close, second round, third round type stuff, second round or the finals, Eastern or Western Conference Finals appearance, maybe, but they never got to the NBA Finals. And they said, "Look, we tried it with our own by ourselves, and I think that's how it should go. That's the right mentality. Once I get to a certain age, if I get on my heart and soul to this franchise, or as a reality for two franchises, if I give out my heart and soul to these franchises and I can't win, by the time I get to my 30s, early 30s, mid 30s, I want to get a championship. If I got to join forces, that's what I'm going to do. And I respect those three guys for doing that. Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett got together, and that right there kind of changed the legacy of how we build teams today, or the start of it, right? Or the start of it, because I thought that's the best way to do it, in my opinion. Let me go out there and bust my ass for 10 years with this one team on my own. If I can't do it, then I can join forces by the time in my 30s. Kevin Garnett had played about 12, 13 years with the Timberwolves. Ray Allen had played. He was about year 14 or whatever playing with the Supersonics and the Milwaukee Bucks, and of course Paul Pierce has spent his entire time with the Boston Celtics and hadn't won anything in about 11 years or 10 years, however long he was in the NBA for at that time. I thought it was great to see this, and I was happy for these guys, but for folks to act like they came in there and just ruined the NBA, no. The next big three ruined the NBA for a minute. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But Boston did a great job. But there was still competition. Kobe and gang was out there now. This is Kobe without Shaq. We sprinkled in D Wade and the Heat when he was by himself, winning a championship. The Dallas Mavericks had Dirk Nowitzki. They were out there balling. A lot of teams were still really good. It was great basketball. Yet again, now you get Chris Bosh with Toronto. They've got a star out there. Vince Carter went to the Nets, and now he's going to play. I mean, it was just great basketball. Orlando Magic. Tracy McGrady was part of that, man. And him going to Orlando and Houston, all that in that same time frame was just beautiful to watch. It was Spurs were still relevant. Spurs were relevant for almost 25 years straight with Tim Duncan and company, Mono Ginobili, Tony Parker. I mean, it was beautiful to watch all that, man. And this era was just great to see it. It was great. The LeBron James was also a part of this era. Couldn't win up in Cleveland. Spent his first, I want to say his first, Lord, I don't want to lie to you guys, 7 years. Spent his first 7 years in Cleveland. And then he went to NBA Finals, didn't win it. And he went to a multitude Eastern Conference Finals and whatever, divisional rounds, and couldn't get it done. Couldn't get it done. LeBron James, in my opinion, his decision to go and team up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami, Chris Bosh also leaving Toronto, going to Miami, that changed it, because the difference between the Celtics Big Three and Miami Big Three 2010 is that Miami had all three guys still in their freaking primes. Everyone was 26, 27, 25. These weren't guys in their early 30s, no. These were guys in their mid to their prime. That's the definition of a big three. That's the definition. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. That's your big three right there. And that made me sick to my stomach. Because with that shift of power, mind you, you're taking LeBron James away from Cleveland, and you're taking Chris Bosh away from Toronto, and they're both superstars for their respective teams. LeBron James, the best player in the world at this time, he just couldn't get it done for a while with Cleveland. But like Michael Jordan, Jordan had to wait as well. Jordan was in 84. He didn't win his first till 91. But he stayed in the same team and went through those hurdles. LeBron didn't do that. He jumped shit, and now we have the whole entire league upside down because the Eastern Conference was no more. It was a known fact. It was a known fact that LeBron with that power move, the East was done. We knew that regardless, the Heat were going to be in the NBA Finals every damn year as long as they stay healthy. Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, now LeBron James. God dog it. And that made the NBA not as far as like bringing life storylines. It was cool to have the storylines out there and for media to talk about that. And even social media was kind of brewing to be what it is now. And that made things pretty cool. But throughout a 5, 6 month season, that one topic can only carry you for so long, right? Until you got to the NBA playoffs, and then that was still like, yeah, but they're gonna win regardless in the East. We knew that. We knew that their competition would be in the West, and it proved they did 4 years straight, 2-2. You know, so it was a breath of fresh air to see the Dallas Mavericks and Dirk Nowitzki beat that team. But what I'm saying is, competition, the whole entire Eastern Conference was gone. Just like that, Toronto and Cleveland, gotta go. Just like that, gotta go. You had the Pacers and Paul George trying to fight. They couldn't do nothing. But in the West was still crazy. Let's not forget about that. The West was still crazy. When you had Kobe Bryant off of back-to-back championships, and then you had, of course, in the East, you still had your Orlando Magic with Dwight Howard and company. But the West was nasty though. The Lakers are there. The Mavericks are there. A young Trailblazer squad with Greg Oden and Brandon Roy were still there before Brandon unfortunately had those injuries to be done with. But you had a lot of teams fighting, man. It was a great young time to be alive in the Western Conference. The Eastern Conference was just dud, boring, dead. All you had was now another aging Boston Celtics team. The reason why the Heat even joined the Big Three is because of a little bit of Boston, a little bit of Kobe Bryant, and those are the two teams yet again, Celtics, Lakers, battling it out yet again. So now you get to the Big Three of Miami, and they just kind of made it not fun until you got to the playoffs, and competition at its lowest. And I just didn't like it. But what happens is LeBron James is the face of the NBA. He's your best player, and if he decides to jump ship, guess what? It gives anyone the kahunas to jump ship. And that is exactly what Kevin Durant did with this move. Kevin Durant, who was arguably top 3 at this time now, at about 2015. Yeah, the year that LeBron left Miami and went back to Cleveland, Kevin Durant says, yeah, I'm going to leave the team that beat us in 14. Beat us in 16, excuse me. And I'm going to join them. It's one of the Golden State Warriors. Durant left that OKC team and went to the Warriors. Now we talk about the KD joining the Golden State Warriors era. And there, if you thought LeBron going to the East, going to the Heat in the Eastern Conference was bad, Kevin Durant going to the Warriors, that let me know for a fact, nobody was going to beat this team at all. It didn't matter the conference at all. So when you think about which move was worse or which move was the worst move to make, Kevin Durant was easily the worst move, right? Not only did this team beat you in the Game 7, you were close, but you also joined this team after they went 7-3-9 and lost to the Cavaliers. I'm like, yo, what are we doing here? What are we doing? That stopped everything. And that was a new era of basketball. Oh, now they got big fours out here? So it lets you know everyone's trying the whole trio thing now. I loved it when it was just a duo thing. And everyone's acting like the Boston Big Three was such a big deal when it was just 3 older guys getting together. Well, now you got Kevin Durant in his prime, Steph Curry in his prime, Klay Thompson in his prime. I don't count Draymond, but let's count him anyways, I guess. Draymond in his prime. Nobody in their right mind was beating that team in that era. None. Not at all. And it made me even more sick to my stomach. But LeBron James had created that. He created it. He created that monster. Not everyone can make that big deal and say, you know what, I'm going to just jump on this team. And it hasn't happened after that. But whoo, that was a huge shift in the NBA. And it made the whole entire league watered down to the fact that if he hadn't got hurt in that playoff series against the Raptors. Oh hell, if Clay didn't get hurt, the Warriors easily beat the Raptors 4-1. But the Raptors want to win because all those injuries happened to Clay, KD, and then Steph at the end. Then the Raptors want to win that series. I think it was 4 games to 2, I believe. Kawhi Leonard in game. But yeah, I mean, that was the end of it. But those are all your eras. I'm going to tell you my actual favorite era. And no, it's not the 90s. The greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan. But that's not my favorite era. My favorite era is about that Lakers three-peat with Shaq and Kobe. So we're talking like 2000 to about 2010. Around the Lakers with Kobe Bryant. In between that, you got the Boston Big Three. And then you got Kobe winning his back-to-back. But then also sprinkling the Spurs. I thought competition was off the charts. Defense was better than it had ever been. Everything felt like bully ball. That's just me. So 01 to about 2010. That little 2010, that little era was the best to me. Competition was crazy good in both conferences, and it was great play, a great blend of athleticism, three-pointers, great defense. I really enjoyed that particular era. That's my favorite era. Albeit the '90s were great as well, but that was just dominated by Jordan, right? And Jordan was just that damn good. It was just dominated by one man, pretty much, and he was just the greatest we've ever seen in our lives. But 2000 to about 2010, I love that era because so much competition left and right. So many teams had a chance, albeit only a few teams won in that era. Talking about the Lakers, the Celtics, the Spurs, and the Pistons wound up winning one as well in there with that great team they had with Rip Hamilton and Chauncey Billups. That was a wonderful team they had as well. So you want to sprinkle that in also. But I thought this was a great era. Great era of basketball. That's my all-time favorite, 2000 to 2010. I'm going to say that little 10-year gap was probably my favorite era of NBA basketball. Let me know in the comments down below, what is your favorite NBA era? And how do you feel about today's NBA? And do you hope it gets better, or do you hope that it stays where it's at? Let me know in the comments down below. My name is Carlos Clayton. This is Uneducated Sports Talk. All sports fans, you guys know what time it is. Stay smart. Stay uneducated. Peace. Lady mama, love you guys well. Have a blessed rest of y'all day. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe